What's up, everybody? Chris Welsh here. Glad to be doing this. Glad to be hanging with all of you guys. Ryan and David, social media interactions, but never getting to talk in person or doing a show. Scott, we did a show pretty much every single week on Fantasy Pros here this past year. So glad to have you guys. Glad to be talking about this. We are talking about our favorite picks at each position. We even prepped. We went behind the scenes. We got like a spreadsheet and we were picking them all, and we were like yelling at each other beforehand, like, why are you picking this? Me and David, we both found out that you and I need to not be in any like NFBC drafts together this year.
Yeah, for sure. Every one of your targets, except for I think one, was pretty much where I was going to go. So I was like, all right, time to go for some new targets here. But yeah, definitely can't be in any high stakes league together this year, Welsh.
No, and one of mine got like just killed yesterday. Like I just let everybody know I had Lucas Erceg, and I was like, I'm just so slick. Lucas Erceg is a great. That's gone because of Carlos Estevez. Maybe he'll still be a fun target, but to identify him as the main guy. Ryan, we've never been able to do a show before, but what position, before we get to this, was your least favorite position to pick a player from?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I guess, third base. It's there's some good stuff at the top. I tried really not to just like, take the top guy at each position, and then it got a little messy after that. So I would say probably third base.
Scotty, what's up, brother? What was your favorite of these? What was the toughest one as you were going through and you just couldn't like figure out one guy you wanted to name, but then I absolutely forced you to just pick one?
I always feel like there's a lot of different pitcher targets. It's the most maddening position because they get hurt and they're always tinkering and changing, so you don't know where the ball is headed. But here's the thing. I was the last person to join this panel, so a lot of the hitting targets I probably wanted were already gone. That's what happens when you show up in the 11th hour. But there's more. Your pitching opinions are probably going to be more divergent than your opponents. Your hitting opinions might be more likely to coalesce, and you're fighting over the same players.
Yeah, and we all truly are. And Scott 100% was, and we told them, we're like, you can't have any of our guys, so just deal with it. And you got to pick the rest of them. If you guys want in the chat, love having you guys here. Feel free as we go. If you have a favorite at your position, obviously we've got 8 we're going to do here. So we're going to go catcher. We're going to go singular outfield, singular starting pitcher. We're going to try to get through this to leave like a tiny bit of time at the end, but I will monitor the chat. If you guys have a favorite at your at each position, I will try to list a couple off as we go if I have the time, and you guys are welcome to throw in the questions. So let's jump into it, and let's start with my least favorite position of catcher. And Ryan, let's start with you. Your favorite catching target for this season?
All right, so I generally don't end up with the top catchers in any leagues. It's kind of generally how I go. So I wasn't going for one of the top guys. I went with Francisco Alvarez of the Mets. You're going to find this list. I'm kind of buying into the Mets magic from last year. I mean, had 25 homers a couple of years ago. Health is definitely a concern. Lots of hand and wrist injuries over the past couple of years. Average isn't great, but he's a 250 hitter in the minors. Not a lot of catchers' averages are great, and he's got 25 home run potential. I think he might not have hit his ceiling yet, so I'm going to go with Alvarez as the 12th catcher or so off the board.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think, just as like a preview here, the narrative is going to be a lot late closers. I don't know if everybody agrees on this panel. Like I'm going to live in the later closer world. I'll take values. NFBC changes it when you're in a 2-catcher format. Obviously, that's going to press you a little bit more. Singular catcher formats, if I can get a good value on a Wilson Contreras or something like that, like, sure, I'm going to jump on it. But for the most part, I'm going to live in kind of a later world. That'll be my name at the end here. David, let's go to you. Are you going to do the same as us? Are you going to live in that later catcher world?
It kind of depends on how the draft goes. I like to look at each draft differently. As you take what the draft gives you. If a guy falls to a place where a Sal Perez, someone that I like, falls to a place where I'm comfortable taking him and there's no one else on the board that I want to take there, I could go that route. But like you, I do plan on going probably cheaper at catchers for the most part. Now it's all variable depending on a number of things, but there seems to be a lot of later catchers going this year that are viable compared to other years. So the guy that I took, because I know a lot of your guys' picks are more in like the early to mid range. I went a little later with Miguel Amaya. Changed his stance in July last year, really lowered his K rate while significantly increasing his hard contact and fly ball percentage, and started hitting the ball with a lot more power. it was a small sample, but he's still young enough to make adjustments at his age. And I know they signed Carson Kelly there. You know, most teams are playing 2 catchers these days, so he's certainly not going to play every day. But I think you could get the lion's share there. He's bad at framing and throwing out runners, but he's great at blocking. He's got good defense overall. He's just a guy who I think could get significant ABs there.
I think we might have a really good sign because the gods are shining down on Pianowski. Scott, you better make this catcher great. It looks glorious. The sun is glazing in on you. I hear, oh, to what catcher for you, Pianowski?
Yeah, I think I need to fix my lighting. So
no, it's phenomenal.
I'll do so after I give you my catcher pick. So I give 2 for the position. The Yahoo standard requirement in a basic Yahoo league is just 1 catcher, and there I'm more likely to go with the market. Just play cheap. And Tyler Stevenson, off a career year into an age 28 season, Cincinnati Park. I think he has a chance at maybe 20 home runs. He's somebody who I like as a value pick. If you need 2 catchers, okay, it's time to accept what Salvador Perez is, a guy who plays just about every day, doesn't get hurt. He'll get DH at bats. He'll pick up a couple of first base at bats. And I don't think we give volume is king in fantasy football. It's also king in fantasy baseball, where if I'm in a 2-catcher format, I don't want my catcher sitting out on Sunday. I want him picking up extra at-bats. I actually think Salvador Perez is building a Hall of Fame case, depending on how you feel about his Gold Gloves earlier in his career. I know we know more about catcher defense right now. In 2-catcher formats, I don't mind taking Salvador Perez in a digit round. In that standard 1-catcher format for Yahoo, Tyler Stevenson would be my target.
That's a good one. There's a lot of great late options. I decided I'm going to throw at you. Somebody in the chat had this as well. I'm going to go with Austin Wells. Austin Wells is going to be a pick because I want to live in the later world. I will point out, I hit in drafts early. If I've seen values on JT Realmuto, I'll pull the trigger on it. Absolutely loving Salvador Perez when he falls. Wilson Contreras. Those are, the types that you can look at. But Austin Wells in that ballpark, absolutely love it. Obviously, from a home run ballpark factor, Yankees are one of the best. Early ATC projections already have him at 11th and homers at catcher. And obviously, he's going later than that. Good barrel percentage, 9%. Hard hit dipped down a little bit, but he's still improving just his overall baseline hitting profile. And it's just in a phenomenal environment. So I like him. A deeper one, I like Ivan Herrera as well would be one. Just really good barrel rates. He's going to get the opportunity this year if you're going on to catcher. Some from the community here. First one was Wilson Contreras. Love that. Sean Murphy is a good one. Fastball Fred did say Ivan Herrera. Wants him bad, by the way. So there you go, Fastball. JR agreed with me with Austin Wells. And we saw a couple other good names in there. So let's get to first base. You guys can drop your favorite first base targets in the chat. We will look at them. And David, let's start with you. Your first base target for 2025. You're muted. You're muted. David, you're muted. Unmute.
My bad.
There we go. Okay, it's okay.
This is where you definitely took my favorite target. So this is the secondary target for me. But Paul Goldschmidt, I know a lot of people don't like to take the old guys, but he had a horrible first half. It looked like he might be falling off a cliff, but he's only 37, not 40. I still think he's got another year or 2 left here. He really pulled it back after that too. He had a low BABIP in May and June, and a really high K rate, but then he really lowered that K rate the last 2 months of the year. He used a more aggressive approach in the second half. Power's still there. He's still running. He had 11 steals again last year. I think he has a big year going to the Yankees now because he's going from St. Louis with a low park factor of 93 for home runs. For that park, going to New York, which is the second best park for right-handed home run power with a park factor of 120. So I'm buying the bounce back.
Fun fact, I was going to take Goldschmidt and I decided to go with the guy. So you and I are again, lockstep, get the hell away from me, dude. Or maybe we need to do a team together. That might be the thing. Too.
Hey,
So lead up. That'll be the tease for to me is I was going to go with Goldie, and me and David are both lockstep here. Mr. Pianowski, let's go to you. Your first base target for this year, or at least your favorite.
Yeah, again, this is a case of picking last. Christian Walker is going to be somebody you talk about who I think is an excellent target, just been underrated his entire career. Colorado is a depressing place right now. It's not quite the offensive Disneyland it used to be, but Michael Toglia, ADP right now in NFBC is around 180. We did see plate discipline improvement in the second half. He still hit the 25 home runs. He's got a first-round pedigree. I think there's room for growth. It's probably the right time for a career season for him. He's going to play. And last year, I looked at the Colorado lineup. I couldn't find anybody I wanted, right? A couple of guys emerged during the season. I think the improvements he made with his plate discipline and with his contact metrics, they kind of skew the fact that his overall stats don't look that great. He did hit 25 home runs. So how many times can you actually make a value pick in the Colorado offense? We haven't done a lot of it lately, but I think he's a great guy to target right now at that, that ADP is around 180 or so. And, first base is not a deep position. I think he's somebody who right now is mispriced.
17% barrel rate, 50% hard hit. And he does have an expected batting average 20 points higher. I can't get over this. I think I want to say like ATC might have had, or Steam, all the projections, I want to say might be under 30. And I've just come to terms with like, if you give me 240 from Toglia, he's hitting 35 homers this year. Like, I don't have a question. If you give me 240 or higher, he's going to hit that. So I love that name. Ryan, your first base target.
I'm staying in St. Louis. First base outfield eligibility. I'm going with Alec Burleson. Broke out last year, big time. And it's like his previous numbers say it should continue. I mean, he hit very well in the minors, had 330 1 year, averaged 21 home runs and 450 at-bats in pretty much both of his minor league seasons. What I like the most, he only struck out 76 times last year and 545 at-bats, showing a little good batting eye. Like you said, it's not the best hitting home field, but Burleson really broke out last year. Cardinals, unfortunately, as a fan, they're going to suck this year. I don't see any reason for them, pitchers to pitch around him. So I think he's going to be able to swing away at will and has a shot at 30 homers.
I like that one. You guys already mentioned it. Christian Walker was my pick. Diamondback like homer. So like I looked at Josh Naylor, and maybe people would have thought I would have went with Josh Naylor's, but I just fooled you. I just went with the former Diamondback. But like, I think it's pretty obvious. Like Christian Walker's a 30 home run hitter. I mean, Gold Glove aside, like it's just a phenomenal, spot for him to be. He's never going to come out of the lineup. He's going to hit in the middle of an order that you're going to have Yordan Alvarez. You're going to have Altuve. I wouldn't even kill it if they brought back Bregman. That would even be more RBI opportunities, but we know he's a 100 RBI guy. And the main thing though, this is the ballpark and how he's going to be able to pull. I mean, it's the thing that we love about Isak Paredes being there. It's the same thing we're going to love about Christian Walker. He's going to take advantage of it. And guess what? Remember when I mentioned Josh Naylor? Walker's cheaper than Josh Naylor in Arizona right now. And that makes me pretty dang excited. So I love Christian Walker in here. Love getting those lower values. A lot of people like Christian Walker in here. Looking at a few others, I think we had a Vinny Pasquantino, some Barrelson in here, Toglia conversation in the chat. Brett also said, David, he said Welsh and Dave in the same TGFBI draft would be cinema or NFBC. It absolutely would. I'm still thinking you and I need to like go in on a big team together. I don't want to go against you.
We can talk about it. I share a main event team with one of my best friends too. It definitely takes you have to have the right philosophy together. Like you can't be, I do one pick, you do one pick.
Yeah.
You guys have to be on the same page, but it sounds like we are.
David, do you want to go do karate in the garage? Just asking. Just trying to see if you want to. All right, let's get to it.
Let me say one other thing about you guys partnering up. Seriously, if you find somebody with the same shared worldview, partnerships are a cheat code in fantasy, right? Colton and the Wolfman have been great partnerships. You have to have a similar view of the world. You have to have a division of the work. You can't have somebody who's more invested in the team than somebody else, but I think it's a cheat code. I apologize to Toglia for mispronouncing his name. It shows you how little I watched Colorado last year. And with Walker, I know we're going to talk Paredes later. I think it's imperative. Houston has some good targets. They just have to be in the top of the lineup. I do not want to be invested in anybody who's batting sixth or lower. This is not the Houston lineup that we've seen over the last decade or so, but as long as you're somewhere close to where Alvarez is, I still think it's a good landing spot for those hitters.
Yeah, especially across the board. All right, let's jump over to our second base. Mr. Scott Pianowski, if I can follow my own rhythm of what I'm doing, if people are picking up on it. Again, if you guys want, drop your favorite second baseman in the chat. We will pick those bad boys up. Pianowski, you get to kick us off with your favorite second base, even though you got the fourth pick of all of us.
Yeah, well, Willie Castro's just a rover, right? He qualifies at 4 different positions for Yahoo. So you don't have to worry about, is he going to be in the lineup, because he's going to be in the lineup a lot anyway. And then if almost anybody gets hurt, it means Willie Castro has to be in the lineup. And I know he's not the greatest real life baseball player. His OPS plus last year was just 102, slightly over a league average player, but a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed. He scored 89 runs last year. Willie Castro, I know every season starts with they don't want him to play 150, 160 games, but Minnesota has a bunch of guys who get hurt all the time. Just an older roster, a kind of a injury-prone roster. We know Byron Buxton will be hurt at some point. We know Carlos Correa will be hurt at some point. So you don't, and this is unlike a lot of these guys where we're going to share opinions and, we all want to draft Christian Walker. We all want to draft, some of the outfielders we're going to talk about. Willie Castro is such a boring, unsexy pick. I think you can kind of name your price. You take him when the rest of the room shrugs. I love having somebody. Maybe I'll even draft him as a bench piece, but he's somebody who can qualify at pretty much any position on the diamond. And I think those are very useful guys in mixed leagues.
Yeah, I think we're also in a really interesting era of fantasy baseball too, where I don't want to say part-time, but like semi part-time / splitsy players have more of a. They have more of a hold than they've ever done before. Like, I think Jock Peterson, I did a video talking about like his value is just so depressed. I know this isn't that position, but just like he's outside the top 300. And if the dude, yes, he's not going to have as many at bats, but dude just hit 282 against righties with 22 homers, and he's going to go to a Texas lineup. So my point is like where that used to feel blah, guys in platoons and guys in like semi part-time starter roles have more of a place in fantasy than I think ever before. And they kind of get depressed a little bit in value.
So I think it also has to do with what type of league you're in. Like if you take Fantrax, for example, where you can only make changes once a week, they have less value. NFBC, where you can make midweek changes, they have good value. But then in Yahoo, where you have daily changes, those guys are like 100%. Cheat codes. Yeah, those guys are exactly what you want on your team.
Yeah, daily versus weekly lineup changes has like a huge play in the Castros and the Jock Petersons of the world. Ryan, let's go to you. Your second base target for 2025.
I went a little lame with this one because I did go towards the top. I went with Ozzie Albies, just a guy I've just had on my teams for a lot of years. And, injury bug seems to bite every other year, which I don't believe is good for this year. But, I mean, when he's in there, he's dead consistent. He can go 30-20, give you a solid batting average. Obviously, an awesome lineup. I don't think I really have to sell Ozzie Albies, really.
Yeah, it's pretty good. He's a pretty good one, if we're being honest. He's a pretty good one. David, let's go to you. Your second base target.
Yeah, so I went with a guy who I've been a fan of for years because of his skill set, Luis Garcia Jr. There's still some issues there. The biggest issue for me being his playing time. Even though he hit decently against lefties, he didn't really have any power against them, but he hit like 260. But they still sat him plenty, even in the second half after having a monster year. But there's a lot to like here. He really raised his launch angle, barrel rates, hard hit rates. He said he started swinging the bat harder. I mean, imagine that. You start swinging the bat harder, but he didn't lose any contact rate really either. Like he still has an 81% contact rate. He doesn't strike out much. The big thing is this is a guy who contributes in every category across the board. He can hit 280 to 300. And that's the most important category to make sure that you keep tacking onto your team as you go along is average, because it's the easiest thing to sink in season. You're picking up guys. It's easy to find home runs off the waiver wire. It's very difficult to find guys who can buoy your average. So anytime I get a chance to get a guy who can give me a 280 plus average, and he stole 22 bases last year too, and Washington's going to keep running. So I still really like Luis Garcia. He's going higher than I thought he would be at this point in NFBC leagues, going around like pick 115. But I think he could be worth it.
Bill, if I could sneak in here for 1 second, Bill James told us a long time ago that guys who are versatile tend to be underrated. Guys who are excellent at one or two things tend to be often overrated. It was couched as a Hall of Fame case for Dwight Evans. It's 10 years old article. I hope some year Dwight Evans does make the Hall of Fame. I love that type of fantasy player, somebody who contributes, but maybe in a quiet sense. I think they're always undervalued. They're guys to target because they're not sexy. They're not stealing 60 bases. They're not hitting 330. They're not driving in 100 runs. So, and also runs scored are so important to me because that means you have a good batting slot. So a lot of times with some of these guys, especially middle infielders, make sure they're batting first or second. They're not batting seventh, eighth, or ninth. Before I make a decision on Anthony Volpe, I need to know he's a leadoff hitter for the Yankees, not the ninth place hitter for the Yankees. But I love guys who contribute in 4 or 5 categories in kind of a sneaky way, because I think you get 1 or 2 rounds of value on those guys very consistently.
Nationals got some sneaky stuff in there too. Like some of it's not so sneaky. Like James Wood isn't like a surprise or sneak to anybody. But when you look across the lineup, like Garcia does have the feel of someone who could even drop a little bit as like a lot more consumer drafts go on. Dylan Cruz too. I'm a big Dylan Cruz guy. When he was up, by the way, he was leading off. So like if he gets at the top of the lineup with that batted ball profile and he ran 12 stolen bases in 30-something games, there you go. You could have 4 guys 25 plus stolen bases on that national team without like hesitating. James Wood, Luis Garcia, CJ Abrams, if he's not gambling, and Dylan Cruz. So, don't bet on that though, CJ. Don't bet on that. My pick here, I think I went with like, if you want the epitome of everyone's favorite player this year that's done any work, it's probably Jordan Westburg. So Jordan Westburg is going to qualify at second base. He'll play third base. Everybody loves him. So I guess I didn't like dig super deep, but guess what? He's also not the first, second, third, or fourth second baseman off the board here. So you have the opportunity. There are players like we're doing shortstop. That's tempted to be like, I love Ellie. But like you have to be in a spot to get Ellie. You don't have to be in a spot to get Westburg. And Westburg last year, batted ball profile is ridiculous across the board. 18 homers, 264 average. He hit the almost 12% barrel number, which he almost doubled his barrel rate. Hard hit went up just around almost 2 percentile points higher to 46. So double-digit barrel, over 45 hard hit rate. Phenomenal grouping to put together. Plus, expected batting average is almost 20 points higher, and he lowered his K rate. And he's going to be in that lineup, which, by the way, left field wall becoming a little bit more hitter friendly for Baltimore makes it all but more exciting. Jordan Westburg is like 100% one of my targets. I want to have him on all teams. So by this positional stuff, he's my favorite. Matt Nielsen in the chat agreed, like Westburg a lot. I saw a Geloff. Brett said, I can't quit Geloff. We saw Cubs fans say Rengifo. John Doe saying Thairo Estrada. Geloff is one I don't know, man. I don't know what to do. Like, I love 2020 guys, but like, can you do it?
If we did this panel last year, he would have been my answer, and that's why he's not my answer this year.
Everybody, so 100%, Ryan. Like we all like. Why would you not like the prospects of Geloff with 2020 potential? But what's funny is it's like him and Spencer Steer kind of had like similar-ish seasons, but we just love Spencer Steer because that profile is better. Geloff's is just versatile-ish, and I mean it from like bad batting average with like 2020.
I like the Estrada call out though. I think he'll be a value in Colorado.
Yeah, that's a solid one. All right, let's see. Where the hell do I have us going here? We're going to third base here. Let's talk about our third base. Ryan, let's kick it right back to you and your third base target for the year.
All right, I'm going back to the Mets again with Vientos. Even in the postseason, 320 with 5 home runs in their postseason run. No speed, which kind of sucks. Everyone likes to get a little speed power combination, but I mean, his batting average is going to sink you to 60, 270, and all that power. And clearly, he came right in and competed and contributed right away. So it wasn't like he had any real issue with the uptick in talent in the major leagues. I mean, last year between the minors, majors, and postseason, he had 38 home runs. I like it more if Alonso's back to trying to, guard him in the lineup a little bit, but I like Vientos. I think he's just about to hit the moon.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the strikeout rate doesn't like obliterate or something like that, like he looks like he could put up an Alonso type season. He get 250 plus average. I really like that one. David, are you when you write, I don't know if you ever if you're doing spreadsheets or you write it out, are you a first, second, third shortstop, or do you write it first, second, shortstop, third? You know what I mean? Like when you physically write out or type out the position, what do you like to go? Third, first, or short?
I go first, third, second, short.
Whoa, you throw it on top. Wait, hold on, Ryan. What are you? First, second? Are you which combination?
I'm first, second, short, third.
Okay, Pianowski?
Yeah, I link the corners and I link the middle infield. I think that makes the most sense.
Whoa.
Like
okay. Like I think he's saying just like you do, David.
Okay.
I did it first, second, third, and then short after that. Probably should have. I think first, second, short, third is classical.
Usually, like if you're doing your team, you're doing like first, third, and then you do corner infield, and then second, short, middle infield. So I just kind of get writing it like that. So that's just how my brain processes it.
Little weird semantics in my brain. Just had to bring it to everybody else. Was just curious because I realized I'm like, I maybe should have done short here. But David, let's hear it. Outside of that take, let's hear your shortstop target for this year.
Oh, are we going to shortstop or are we still on
I'm sorry, third base. See, it's screwed up. I completely accepted my own brain.
Welsh is driving us off the road right now.
No, I know.
Right now, the pitching coach needs to come out. And
my brain is all scrambled now.
We need a error.
First Welsh Chiefs he takes Westberg at second base where he's not even eligible, so that he can then put Jake Berger at third base, who would have been either my first or third base target.
Here comes
what's going on? Hey, Welsh, we gotta take you out. Are you good?
What's going
on? Good?
My brain was all rambled. What? Okay, so Nick, what is
it?
You
know, it's the fiance's anniversary soon. What should I get her?
What?
It's a pitching visit. All right, come on. I'm
sorry.
I'm doing Bill Durham. It's fine. Go. You got it.
Candlesticks are always nice.
But he did. But he didn't answer.
Candlesticks are not a good answer, by the way, Robert Wall. Don't buy anybody candlesticks.
Third shortstop, first second. Okay, David. Sorry, he still didn't answer. He can answer at the end. But what do you got?
Isak Paredes. Pretty simple. Pulls the ball more than anyone else in baseball the last 2 to 3 years. He didn't last year, but it was still like top 3 or 4. When it was in Tampa, that worked fine as a righty, but when he went to the Cubs, it didn't, because that's a horrible park for pulling the ball for right-handed power. So now he goes to the best park that he's been to for right-handed power, a place where Bregman and his limited power hit 41 homers last for one season. So I don't see why Paredes can't go there and hit 35. Honestly, like he doesn't hit the ball that hard, but he pulls it down the line, and he does that enough. He's gonna pile on the home runs there.
This is I think he's one of the best sleeper only just because his value is depressed, and it's gonna not be depressed anymore. It's such a good pick here. Scott, your third base target.
Yeah, here's where we're picking late hurt me, because Paredes and Vientos were two guys I would have focused on. Paredes has been with teams who didn't want to play him every day. Houston will play him every day and probably bat him in front of Alvarez, which is the catbird seat. Vientos, I don't know what they're doing with Alonso, but right now he's sitting behind Lindor and Soto. There's going to be guys on base for him all season. I think you could drive in 120 runs. I went with an old, boring. I used to talk about the Raul Ibanez All-Stars a long time ago, these boring veterans. That's what Eugenio Suarez is. He's age 33 season. ADP is about 167 right now. What does Suarez do? People are going to laugh at this, but I call him second half Suarez. Because 7 of the last 8 years, he's been better in the second half. He hit 20 home runs after the All-Star break last year. 2019, he hit 29 home runs after the All-Star break. He's no longer in Seattle. He was in, obviously, Arizona last year, a more neutral park. He's a boring player. Not only do I think he's a great draft target where you're getting him now, but he's an outstanding trade target in June when he has ordinary stats, because I don't know what it is. If it's a conditioning thing, if he's just not ready when the season starts, he needs the weather to warm up. Obviously, it's indoor games in Arizona most of the time, but this trend has happened 7 out of 8 years, the second half spike. I'm going to have Suarez anchoring my corner infield in the second half of the season.
Yeah, we have a really interesting dynamic that's happening here too, because there's the battle of your favorite breakouts, your favorite sleepers, the guy you want to have on all your on your teams, and we're talking about our favorite targets, and you have this battle between yeah, sure, if I could get Austin Riley a little bit of value, I want him. But then why would you not? Eugenio Suarez could fill if you kind of dumped out on the position, or you want to go with corner. The same thing kind of across the board with a lot of picks. Again, positional stuff here. Jake Berger was my pick. Again, I view it kind of like Jordan Westberg in the same token, where it's everybody loves Jake Berger, yet his value is still depressed. Dave, I think you said in the chat for Pitcher List that we're talking about Paredes. Last 2, I think it you that wrote that last 2 weeks in NFBC, or was that somebody else?
Yeah,
he's still 200.
I'm less than Dave on there.
Yeah, still 200 Paredes.
204 last 2 weeks ADP in draft champions drafts. It'll be up by the live mains, but I mean, he's going to be a great value, I think, all through draft season. And
the same thing kind of applies with Jake Berger. You're getting the values that are kind of increasing, but obviously, again, combinations, kind of like a Vientos. You've got high barrel, you've got high hard hit. You're now putting him in an incredible hitting environment. The only weird thing is roster resource putting him at 8 or 9. I think that's going to be pretty difficult. I mean, hell, if I'm the Rangers, I want to hit him in front of Adolis Garcia, if we're being honest. We'll see how they end up, adjusting rosters and whatnot. But Jake Berger, for some position flexibility, big, massive homers, and a hitter-friendly environment with, if he is hitting higher, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, Wyatt Langford, all of these guys hitting in front of him, the RBI opportunity. I mean, this poor dude, White Sox to Marlins. You're now going into the golden era of Jake Berger here. So Jake Berger, prime target, one of my favorite at this position, first base. You can kind of pull it apart. I don't know if I saw a ton in the chat. Josh Young was one. That's kind of interesting. I'm really not into Josh Young this year, though I will say 47% hard to hit rate in 2023 with a good barrel. Everything tanked last year, but he had the wrist injury. So you definitely could see like him being healthy now in that same environment. He could thrive a little bit, and he is free 99. So he was about the only one that I saw in here that people put. Is anybody going to hand up for Josh Young as a great target for this year? Any of you guys?
I mean, he was another one that was one of mine last year, and burned me again. You see how my teams went last year; it was injury crazy. I do, like you said, I'd like his profile. It's just a matter if he can stay healthy and be out there.
Yeah, we'll see a little bit more questions. All right, let's go to shortstop. Actually, this time, if you guys in the chat type in your favorite shortstop targets, we'll see who we got here. David, let's start with you. Your favorite shortstop target. It's all falling.
Yeah, this is a position that last year I loved the shortstops values. This year I kind of hate it. I went with Xander Bogaerts. It's kind of similar to the thinking with Goldschmidt. I'm expecting a bounce back. He's only 32 years old. It's not like he's 40 again. But this is another guy who can contribute an average. This is a guy who should be hitting 275 plus. He can hit 300 plus. I liked him a lot more in Fenway. Not as good of a park being in San Diego, but he should still be a 15-15 guy. He'll probably hit sixth. So the batting order might not be ideal, but he also gives you second base and shortstop eligibility, which is also huge. So I just think he's a guy who's kind of like Scott was saying before. He's getting forgotten. He's a guy who's contributing in every category, but he's not going to be a superstar. This is not an upside pick, right? This is a pick that can win you leagues in a quieter way, not like a guy who's going to bust out, but you get those guys earlier in the draft, and then you supplement with guys like Bogaerts and Goldschmidt later, and those are the kind of picks that can win your draft for you.
I'm hearing a lot of slander about 40-year-olds in this panel, which I have to say I'm really not digging. I mean, I could get out there and poke 20 in the right park.
I don't like to draft guys once they hit like age 35, and it depends on the situation. But
being over 40 now, like I wouldn't draft me. I agree with the slander. It's awful. I would not draft. I hurt I got Zach Neto's shoulder right now. Like everything is falling apart. So yeah, I kind of get that. All right, Pianowski, let's go to you. Your shortstop target for 2025.
Miami's going to be the worst team in the National League East. They're going to be fodder for three loaded teams that all have playoff designs. But Xavier Edwards can still give you a great season. I mean, look what he did in 70 games, right? 328, 397, 423. And not only did he steal 31 bases, he stole 31 of 35 bases. I feel like he could get maybe 60 or 70. I remember Jonathan VR had a year a few seasons ago when Baltimore, I think it was down, and it's like they just didn't care. YOLO, just run whenever you want. I think Edwards is going to have that kind of season. And even in the minors, right, he was 313, 385, 399 guy with 119 steals and 151 attempts. I don't know. Team stinks. I don't care. I think he's stealing 50 bases, and right now his ADP is around 160. That's a screaming value.
I think a lot.
Yeah, when I saw the list, I was like, damn, I missed that one completely.
Yeah, and I think he's like a pretty popular, and I don't I'm not dismissing it. Like he is a popular name to pay attention to when you're chasing stolen bases later in drafts. That comes with high batting average. And David, you said it earlier. One of my biggest bugaboos has been, and it really was last year, especially in like NFBC drafts, was just like brain farting on batting average and just being like, I'm okay. I'm like I have this guy right here. I was this guy through drafts with batting average where I'm like, this is fine. Everything is fine right now with batting average. And then I look and it just falls apart. Xavier Edwards.
Not something you can fix either. Like you can't fix that. Like
that's the problem.
You can fix homers with more bad batting average. You can fix stolen bases with more bad, across the board. You're just not going to fix it. Or homers you can fix with bad batting average. Stolen bases tends to come with bad batting average and RBIs. So I like to avoid being this guy when it comes to batting average. So
batting average is the silent killer. You need to be aware of it your entire understanding. There's a range for these guys, right? Is a 30 or 40 point batting average range. And we're always looking for guys who might have some sneaky upside there. But also because we become more it's such a swing and miss league now. And there's guys who can hit 210 or 220 and still have fantasy value that I think maybe people are more accepting of those types of players. And you look in the middle of the season, you're 10th in batting average. You're like, how the heck am I going to fix that? So I want you to be mindful. You don't have to make every pick with batting average in mind, but I want you to be mindful of it the entire time that you're drafting.
Ryan, let's go to you. I think you got to the sheet first and your shortstop. I looked, I was like, yeah, that's the one. That's like the really good one. So I'm going to take a different bit of an angle. But this was, I think, one of the first ones in the chat when we brought up shortstop that came up here. So let's talk about your favorite target at shortstop.
Again, a little bit of a homer pick. Well, I guess not a homer pick, but it is my Cardinals shortstop, Mason Wynn. I think he's going to be more of a middle infield guy than a starting shortstop, but I think he's really just scratching the surface. Checks kind of all the boxes. He scored 85 runs last year. He's going to hit about 270, 280. He's got, maybe 2015 kind of season. So I think he's going to be a guy like Scott was talking about earlier that kind of contributes all around. And just being real young, I think he's still got a lot in front of him. Defense is never going to take him off the field because he's a great shortstop. So I think I like him a lot all over the place.
So my angle's a tiny bit different. I am going to go higher. I try not to pick the higher guys, but I think there's a twofold piece here. You guys picked a lot of the great names that I think are probably going to be closer to your middle infielders, unless you're playing in deeper leagues and you kind of really avoided the position. Some of these can play shortstop, but also David said earlier, or maybe it was Pianowski. You said the shortstop. Yeah, I think it was you, Scott. That was shortstop just isn't as good. It just doesn't feel it. Oh no, that was you, Dave. Okay. I was right the first time. That shortstop just doesn't have the same feel.
Yep.
That's more why I want to have an earlier investment if I have a possibility to lock it down, and then I can go get a Wynn or an Edwards or a Bogarts to be a complementary piece. So that's why I'm going to give you guys Corey Seager, because he is not the first or second shortstop off the board, but we know exactly who he can be coming off of the not great season. That not great season, by the way, is built probably around the batting average. He still hit 30 homers. He still hit 278. But he got hurt, and that we want the injuries to depress down. I can still feel comfortable being involved in him because the things that have been making him great are still there. Batted profile across the board looks ridiculous. He didn't lose any barrels this past year. He lost some hard hit, but it wasn't significant. It was still over 50% on Corey Seager. K's didn't go up to an alarming degree, and he had an expected batting average that was higher than his at around 290. So I don't get stolen bases, but guess what? We can find it in other places. Xavier Edwards, prime example. Pair Edwards and Corey Seager together, and then make sure you get some power in some other spots, because what have we learned? We cannot make up that batting average. Corey Seager's a great homer, run, RBI, and batting average play. So Corey Seager is going to be mine.
I think for Seager, you have to ask the question, has he been injury unlucky, or is it part of who he is? Okay. If you think he is, how many games are we getting here? 123, 119 the last 2 years. When you got the 151 games in 2022, he was, close to being a league winner, even though he hit for an unusually low average. He's got maybe the best eye discipline at the plate. They create stats named after Corey Seager. And if I needed an at bat for my life, he'd be one of my top 5 picks. I think he's that good. You just have to ask yourself, what are your expectations for his playing time? Now, the thing is, if he even gets to 140, he's an easy profit. And that Texas team, we love. We always talk about regression a lot of times like it's a negative thing. There's so much positive regression built into that Texas lineup. They win the world championship 2 years ago. Last year, everything goes wrong. Everybody gets hurt. They were kind of the poor man's version of what Atlanta was in the National League. And so a bunch of guys didn't hit their ranges. If I'm willing to bake in 20 to 25 missed games for Seager. If I hit that, man, he's going to smash his 80.
But the thing is, I think that's okay, because I think he can miss those games and he's still giving you 30, 33 homers. He can easily hit over 300 too. So I just think you have to know how to construct a roster around Corey Seager.
Yeah.
So if you draft Corey Seager, your middle infielder needs to be a shortstop, and it needs to be a guy that you put some value in. You can't wait on a backup shortstop. You need someone who can step in and move. You can move them from middle infield to starting shortstop when Seager misses time.
And Mason Wynn's a prime example of that.
It also may speak to how we draft upside down sometimes, where if you feel really good about some of the values in the outside of the top 200, the middle infield, it might make you more comfortable selecting Seager where you have to take him.
The worst part about Corey Seager too is I was at game, 4 and 5 or whatever of the World Series. I went to both of those. I sat at the angle where I saw every bit of Corey Seager's homer and chase. It was just it was like, oh, there it is. It was just direct with me. It just went with me. And I was there to see them win. And Corey Seager was a monster, and he's a monster in fantasy. And he's applicable to talk about here because you don't have to pay a first or second guaranteed pick. Third and fourth is where it starts to open up here. The couple of the interesting ones in the chat, Dansby Swanson, Volpe. Neto is another one I'd kind of throw out that like he's the batted profile's got some questions. He optimized, but he's also being depressed by the injury stuff. Not that I advocate for drafting a bunch of injury guys, but he's being pretty depressed that he could be a pretty fascinating one here. So there you go. Those are some of the shortstops. Let's jump into the outfield. We got some big outfields. Where am I here? I think we're starting with Scott. I think, Scott, we're going to start with you here. Your outfield target for 2025.
Yeah, he's a little bit pricey, but the Oakland Nomads, Sacramento Nomads, they're playing in a minor league stadium, and Lawrence Butler will be at the top of that lineup. He was terrible for 6 weeks. They sent him down. They recall him mid-June. What did he do the rest of the way? 290, 330, 565, 20 home runs, 15 for 15 on the stolen bases. I know it's an arbitrary endpoint, but if you cut up 55 runs, 50 he drove in. If you rank every 5x5 hitter from that moment he came back, he was the number 11 hitter in fantasy baseball. So, yes, the ADP of 72 is a little bit pricey. That park will be better for offense because Oakland was just about the worst place to hit. You ever been to a game in Oakland? The game's like a rumor. I sat in the first row by the bullpens, and it's still I had no idea what was going on. And nonetheless, I wish they had made a way to keep baseball in Oakland. It's just a shame that they've done what they've done, and it's a bunch of really bad ownership there that I don't have any respect for. But I know it can be kind of scary sometimes when somebody has a partial season. You think, is there going to be a sophomore jinx? Are people going to learn to attack their weaknesses? Are they not going to be as prepared the year coming in? But I'm going to have Lawrence Butler shares because he basically won me over for life for those final 3 months last year.
Funny enough, I've just been to like no stadiums, but I grew up in the Bay Area and my entire family were Oakland A's fans. And that is one of like 4 stadiums I have been to. I grew up going to
4 stadiums. For shame.
I know.
They're collectible, man. You should have like 23. You said you're 40. You should have like 23 stadiums.
I'm not cultured. I don't go anywhere. I go, where? I have been to 10 times over minor league parks, and especially the backfields here than I have
like
on
minor
Major
league
League
baseball.
Well,
Well, hey, then Oakland's your team. Sacramento's your team. They play in a minor league park.
Let's go on down. Ryan, let's jump to you. Your outfield target for 2025. I like that Lawrence Butler one. Where are you going?
I went with Riley Green, the Tigers, 5th overall pick in 2019. I don't know that he's hit his ceiling yet. Another injury concern, which I've picked several. Last year's 137 games was career high, but I think he's got more stolen bases in the future. Hasn't gotten double digits yet, but he had 16, 18 in the minors. If he can stay on the field, I think he's got a shot at 30 homers, at 24 last year. It's a 30th outfielder off the board. I just think he's just freakishly athletic, and I think his best days are ahead of him.
Age 24 season, too. Yeah, Riley Green, the arrow is pointing up. I'd like to see a better Tigers lineup around him. I don't know if they're still kicking the tires on Bregman, but Riley Green is going places, man. I'm a huge Riley Green fan.
It does feel like we've loved Riley Green for a long time, though, so it's about time we're ready for that to kick in. David, where are you going with your outfield target for this year?
So I, again, went a little lower than you guys to try to find a little value later in the draft. I really like Heliot Ramos. I think for where he's going in drafts, he's an easy pick for me. He had 30 homers last year between AAA and the majors, which was backed up with 14.5% barrel rate, 47.5% hard hit rate. And if you listen to Kyle Bland's presentation earlier, he was also talking about his elite swing speed. He's in very good company there. So, he's got a 73% contact rate, which for a power hitter is very much acceptable. Everything looks legit with the power. He runs a little bit as well. He should hit close to every day in the middle of that lineup. And he is elite versus lefties, like second best hitter in baseball versus lefties after Aaron Judge. And granted, obviously you'd rather see that against righties than lefties. But the downsides are the power will be kept due to the park, a very low pull percentage, and a lower launch angle. But, he's still very young enough to make some adjustments still. And I just think you're getting a really solid player for that point in the draft.
I like that one too. Again, another one of those guys like recipes, or give me like really good barrel and hard hit. And that's what Helio does. And then you have some sneaky running, ballpark factor and stuff is something to consider, but him playing every day is just the most important thing. And you get him so cheap. So I really like that Helio Ramos one. I went with a higher name, and obviously we could go in so many directions because it's the outfield. We could pick a million guys here. So I kind of honed in. I'm like, who do I have to draft? And I actually came to terms with 2 guys, and they're both high-end players. And sometimes they battle each other. Obviously, White Langford would be one of those. I think a lot of us probably in there in the batting average runs. I can't pick all Rangers, though. So I had to not, which by the way, what a masochist. Like they destroyed I went to a World Series where they broke my heart. I'm picking them all, but I decided to go with James Wood, who we talked a little bit about earlier. And, freakish athlete. I remember last year, someone asking me and not even from a physical body standpoint, but it was who is a player that could exemplify some of what Ellie does? And it was well, James Wood. And he is one of those big 6'6", 6'7" guys, put up that recipe of what you're looking for this past year. 10% barrel rate in the majors, 52% hard hit rate, which you love. He hit 264 with a higher expected batting average, hit over 260 both sides of the plate too. Because I think people get it mixed. He had a 28% strikeout rate, but he did this in the minors as well. He can hit both sides of the plate. He also had an 80% zone contact percentage as a rookie, which is a really great start, just slightly under major league average, but it's huge, massive, big max EVs, good barrel, good hard hit. Projections are going to love him. Don't be surprised if he has a 30-30 season. And again, he's not a top necessarily 40-ish guy. So that he kind of jumped out to me as the outfielder that I would target.
Passes the grandmother test too, where you take somebody who knows nothing about baseball and says, look on the field. Who is the stud prospect in this lineup? They're going to point to James Wood.
Yeah, boy, I will tell you what, there is some hate in the chat for PCA though. Oh, these guys hate it.
I almost picked him.
It is PCA is going to be Kevin Kiermaier. It is pretty brutal in the streets here. Though Uncle Ted, I see, says PCA is Corbin Carroll 2.0. We also saw Evan Carter, Colton Cowser, Nolan. I can't get down with the Nolan Jones one. Those are some outfield picks that we saw.
PCA is a great defender, which I guess where the Kiermaier comp comes in, but his play discipline got better in the second half. He offers category juice. And I think, again, batting average sensitivity, I think you could at some point wind up batting first or second for them. Crow Armstrong is welcome on my teams. Maybe I hang out with Sarah Sanchez too much online. We talk about the Cubs, but man, love his defense. I think he could have won a Gold Glove.
I'm not sure where he goes with the power department, but there are so many of these shortstops. CJ Abrams does it with a less than stellar hitting profile, and he maximizes by getting the ball in the air. PCA can get across his body for high batting average, but I think he can do it. I'm just not I'm not slamming the table for PCA.
Let me say one more thing when we cap the outfield. There's years where outfield seems deep. There's years where outfield seems a little bit shallow. Sometimes it's the Goldilocks medium. You're just right. Is outfield deep, shallow, or kind of in the middle this year, guys?
What do you guys think?
It's weird because you think it's very deep, and then when you're in a league where you need 5 and there's 12 people that need 5, and some on your bench, then all of a sudden we're 75 guys deep. So I think it's improving from where it's been a couple of years ago. I think there's still some improvement to come, but there's a lot of young guys that I think have a chance to join the group this year that will be no doubters next year.
This is how I'll define it. There's been years where I thought it was deep enough that if I was between 2 positions, round 15, round 17, round 18, I would say, well, wait on the outfielder. I'm going to like the guy I get in round 23. This is a year where I will break that tie, maybe taking the outfielder, doing some early mock drafts, some magazine work. I didn't love what I was getting for a 5th outfielder if I was kind of reactive to the position. So I'm going to be just a tiny bit. It's not a huge adjustment. I'll be a little bit more proactive with my outfield in the second part of my draft.
I was pretty loud about that last year. I'm not sure if I feel as dramatic as it this year, but maybe it's just always. It kind of feels always. Every time I look at my 5th outfielder, I'm like, ugh, what am I doing? I just am mad at myself, David.
I haven't done any drafts yet. I'm a late season drafter, but just from looking at ADPs right now, I feel a lot better about drafting outfield than I do about, say, second base, shortstop. At first and third, there's some later targets that I like, but middle infield is looking the worst I've seen it in a long time.
And this is, again, the idea of drafting upside down, right? Before you go into a draft, look outside the top 200, look outside the top 250, look outside the top 300. What position has players? Oh yeah, I see a bunch of guys I like, and what position has players? And you're like, geez, I don't really want to draft any of these guys. And I realize, I know how you make the fantasy gods laugh. You make a plan, but just keep in mind, you want to look at what's at the end of the draft before you start making those plans.
Same thing goes for research. You want to look at what you can get at the end of the draft and then build from the back to the front.
Clearly, the answer is Luis Rengifo. He covers everything that David had an issue with. So second base, outfield, do all that stuff. All right, we got to make our money though. It's pitching time. So we got 2 left here. We got on that under 10-minute marker, and it's starting pitcher time. You will be harshly judged by Mr. Nick Pollock. So choose wisely, my friends. Ryan, you can kick us off here. Your favorite starting pitching target for the season.
Cole Reagans. That's it.
Oh, there you won. There you go. Just right to the.
Yeah. I thought I went a little too early. My first pick was Shota Imanaga. I mean, he was amazing last year. He was hot down the stretch, so don't worry about more work this year. I hate the Cubs, but man, he was really good. Didn't walk very many guys. 220 batting average against. 27 home runs. That's a little high. Don't love that, but it is part of the park that he pitches in at home. I think he's awesome. Jeffrey Springs would be my later pick, which I double-checked the list to make sure no one picked him, but those are my 2 quick ones.
All right, there you go. Just right to the peanut gallery, Ryan. That's a good pick, and that's going to win you extra points. You may have just won. David, let's go to you. Starting pitching target for 2025.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was really tempted to take a guy that I knew Nick wouldn't like a Hunter Brown. But arguing with Nick is exhausting. So I decided to go with Bailey Ober. He's got an elite fastball with elite extension. He's got an elite changeup. His slider also has an over 30% whiff rate. I just think he's the whole package. He had 2 – he's an elite whip guy, even despite the 2 monster blowups where he gave up, I think, 17 runs between 2 starts. I just don't think that that'll happen every year where he just has 2, huge blowups. And I think you're going to see that ERA be a lot closer to like 3.3 than 4. So I just think he gives you everything you're looking for in an ace. And I think there's some pretty significant upside with the strikeouts still too, where you're not just getting like a 9 strikeout per 9 guy.
I like that one. Mr. Scott Pianowski, what do you got?
Yeah, Logan Webb's going to be my pick. His ADP has slipped outside the top 100. I realize the strikeout rate came down last year, but he's been unlucky with his sequencing the last couple of seasons. I mean, last year's ERA, 3.47. I'm sorry, last year actually he was lucky against his ERA, but he was unlucky with his sequencing. I just like guys who are durable. I like guys who are around the plate. I do trust the San Francisco defense. So Logan Webb, because last year he was a top 50, top 60 pick. I don't see much difference between him last year to this year. Again, the strikeouts you have to mitigate, but the San Francisco park will hide some of his mistakes. You might get him as your 3rd starter this year, and I think that's a steal.
That's the key. Well, it's also going to be about drafting strategy because there's like so many guys I look at and you're like, oh, that's a great 3rd starting pitcher, except for the people that wait for starting pitchers and then they start snagging them all up and it gets crazy. But there are so many in that range, probably also why some of us can be more comfortable not going heavy in early investment. And one of my guys is right in your range, Spencer Schwellenbach. I'm absolutely obsessed with. I want to leave every single draft I possibly can with him. 3.35 ERA this past season. Really good low batted contact against, like under 5% barrel, which you like. Didn't walk a ton of guys. There's some similarities. Like you look at like Brian Wu, Brian Wu, there's so much he does well and not walking and everything, but the strikeout potential you kind of lose, where Schwellenbach's one of those guys that he had 4 pitches. He throws 5 pitches, double-digit percentile of the time. 4 of those had a 24 or higher K percentage. 2 of those had an over 30% K percentage. He had a 25.4% K percentage, an almost 20 minus K minus walk percentage, and a lower than 3.5 ERA. And by the way, he was phenomenal in the second half, having a sub 3 ERA in around 79 innings. So I'm the big fastball, split finger. Be interesting to see if he changes some mixes here. I got to have me some Spencer Schwellenbach across the board. Probably my favorite starting pitcher. David, looks like you have a Schwellenbach take.
I would take Schwellenbach over a lot of guys going ahead of him. I would take him over Garrett Cole with no question. Like, it's not even close for me.
Over Garrett Cole. I love that.
Yeah, I also think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I don't think Cole is good. I don't think not good in talent-wise, but I don't think he's healthy. And I think he's getting way overdrafted right now.
Man, I'm worried about Corbin Burns too with that strikeout rate. It's just gone down every year, and now
it seems like that was intentional, though, right? And I don't know if you go back to striking guys out, which is a bigger concern, right?
It's kind of anomalous. Like when I look at Corbin Burns, like, ooh, that might be the outlier. We'll have to see how this year goes.
You mentioned Brian Wu also. Just leave your draft with somebody on that Seattle staff. It's just so relaxing to watch games there. So
we'll do it with Brian Wu because it's late. I don't know if Justin Mason, by the way, shout out to Colette and Mason there in here. Mason was screaming Schwellenbach. I don't know if that was pre or just going with me. We saw Grayson Rodriguez that was in there. Look at Robbie Ray. John Doe says 2025 NL Cy Young and Titus Pants Award winner. And I'm trying to see if I see Bailey Ober's another one in there. So we got some good ones. Are we going to get to do our relief pitchers?
Yes. Okay, there we go. I got it. Good. StreamYard's weird. We got 3 minutes. If you can do it really quickly, yes. But I just want to say really quickly, Dave, you're right about Ober. Good stuff. Schwellenbach, love him. Bad fastball though, and I don't know. Jason Collette hates him because of the Spencer Strider innings thing. Jason, gotta get over it. Ryan Hallam, Cole Reagans. I don't know if he's a target because everyone ADP is like 11 now, and like it's hard to make that a target because that's where he should go. But it's like, can I target that? I don't know. Logan Webb, changeup's bad. He stopped throwing the changeup. Scott, what's going on? Why do you do that?
I like to think I took a nap on the changeup, didn't completely sleep on it, but so noted.
Oh no, I don't know. Logan Webb was like trying to figure it out, trying to get the old slider too, and then I mean, you're right that like the volume is going to be completely there. It could easily be above a 20% strikeout rate. He's just one of those guys. Like I think you didn't even mention that Logan Webb doesn't even think he's a SP1 or an ace. You know. So all right, go do your relief pitchers. I'm gonna give you 2 more minutes. Get out of here.
Right. All right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. All right. I'm going to just give mine because mine got taken away from me. Lucas Urseg. Maybe he'll be great. At the end of the day, in our choppy block world here. That's fun. Our names are all mixed around. All right. I'm going to go to Chris Welsh here in just a second, but I'm going to go with like Jordan Romano. As one, just, like a lot of the sites haven't caught back up to him. Great shot to be closing for Philly. No, he should have kept us all in the wrong one. Lucas Urseg was my play. At the end of the day, I'll just throw out, and maybe it's low hanging fruit. I just want like later closers. I'm not like big into the heavy early investment. NFBC does change your mind a little bit, but Lucas Urseg was one that I thought was going to be able to maintain that. That got thrown out the window. I kind of like AJ Puck with the Diamondbacks, but it might be Justin Martinez. So I'm looking at some of those situations, but I'll go with a guy like Romano right now because he's still like, relatively going outside the top 15 of closers. Let's just go Ryan, David, and then Pianowski. Ryan, who's your closer pick real quick?
Real quick, I went towards the top again. Mason Miller, 104 strikeouts in 65 innings. The team is improving. ERA was a little high at 2.5, but his WHIP was 0.86. I mean, a little unlucky giving up runs last year. He's an absolute stud.
Mr. Chris Welsh. I mean, David McDonald.
Trevor McGill was the one that stood out to me just because I think he's in the most secure situation. Like when you're looking for saves, that's the most important thing. It's not your skills. It's how secure you are in your role. And I think he's pretty secure there. And he has good skills. And he goes like a round or two after the guys who he should be going at the same time as.
That was legit my Urseg argument. I was like, there's nobody else there that's going to like take it away. And then that was stupid. Pianowski, finish us off here.
Yeah, I love how he pointed out roles over skills, which is the opposite of how we draft every other position.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
90% of the law in closing, I don't see anybody challenging Ryan Walker in San Francisco, and his numbers popped off the page. He didn't walk people. Strikeout rate was juicy, and they've set up a bullpen where everybody is basically going to feed to him. I think he's the cheapest 30 saves you can get ADP outside the top 100.